Hello everyone, welcome to Django beginners tutorial on AMA code. In this video, let's create a user application and work on with users registration. Setting up our user application, as we said, user application is going to contain all the authentication and account feature of our project. So let's create, and in here we need to supply the name of our application. Let me give it as user. So after creating our application, as I said before, we have to go under installed application. We have to register our application, user application in there under user, and in apps.py file we have to include user config. So now let's move on working with user registration. So let's talk about user creation form. For registration, we don't have classes, so we have to create our own form and view, but in form we have user creation form that have all inbuilt validation checks that ensures no username is being repeated from the DB. So the username and email ID should be unique for every users. So this form will take care of all the validation check. Any username or email ID duplicates, they automatically inform the user that this email or user ID already exists in our database. So try again. So it will all perform all the validation checks for us in the background. So to use that form, we need to create an forms.py file in our user application. So to use that user creation form, first we need to import our form in this forms.py file. So under Django and contrib and in auth and in forms, we need to import this user creation form. So we can use this form like our model form, which accepts all the information that's needed for this form from its child. So to do it, let's create a class named registration, and this registration form class is going to be the child of our user creation form, and all the information required for the parent will be present in the class meta of our child class in our model form. Same in here. Then let me create a subclass named meta within our child class. In here we are going to all the information that are required like models and fields. As I said, for models we are not going to create a new user model. We are going to use the user model that Django provides already for us. To import that Django model in here from Django and in contrib and in auth and in models, we have to import user. This is the user model which stores all the credentials. So in here we are going to use the user model. So let me give model equal to user, and in the fields, for the fields we need username, email ID, password and confirm password field. Confirm password field. For now let me give username, password and confirm password. Let us discuss about email within a second. So let me pass in the username. The field name of this user model to store the username information is username, and the password field in this user model is named password 1, and the confirm password field in this user model is named password 2. Okay, that's it. We have created our registration form. So now let's go to this views.py file and register our form in here. So def, so let me give it as registration, and let me pass that request variable. In here let me create the instance of that form. To create that, first we need to import this form right in here. So from current directory and in forms we need to import registration form. Let me create an instance of it. Okay, and in here we need to use the render method within our return statement, and let me pass the render method in here, and we need to pass that request variable, and in here we need to specify the template, which template to use. So for this user application I'm going to create another directory named users. So the templates for all our user application will be stored in here. So in here let me create a new file named registration. So let me get rid of this and let me move back to this views.py file and include that folder in that file in here, and in users we need to include our registration.html, and we need to pass this form right into our front end. So under the dictionary within the name of form I'm going to pass this form variable. Okay, that's it. Now we can use that form in here. So at first let me extend this from the base HTML. In our post directory we are going to extend this from base.html, and in here let me provide the title block and let me name it as registration, and let me provide body block, and in here let me actually use that form that comes from our view, and let me provide a submit button to it, and let me provide some materialize CSS class to it to make it look like a button. Sorry, I have forgot to give an comma in here, so let me include that and run the Django server again. Before moving to our browser we need to register our view with an URL. So to do it, let's create an urls.py file specific to our user application in here, and let's create mapping for all the views in here, and let's finally include this file in our main urls.py file. In here we need to import our path and also our view from current directory, and in views we have to import our registration view. Let's create URL patterns list and let's register our path in here, and moving on to this register location our view is gonna fire up. Let's provide our view in here, and let me provide it a name for it. Let me give it as register. So that's it, we are registered and path with our view, and in this main url.py file we have to register our user urls.py file. So to do it within path, let me give that path as an user, and in here I'm going to include my user urls.py file, user.urls.py. Okay, that's it, we have included our urls.py file right in our main url.py file, and we have registered our view with an URL. Yeah, our page pops up and you could see in here username and password field in here and confirm password field in here. It's aligned in an uncommon manner, so let's align it perfectly with the help of third-party library called Crispy Forms. And we have to do one another thing in here. Under our form tag we have to give our method as post. So for now let's align all these things in a correct format. To do it we have to use a third-party library named Crispy Form. So from pip install we have to say Django Crispy Forms. This will install that package for us, and our crispy forms package has been successfully installed. As I said, whenever we install a new application, we have to add those to our installed application list. So in here, let me add crispy forms in here. That's it. So, and the next thing is that we need to configure crispy forms in settings.py file as crispy underscore template underscore pack. Let me show you that thing in here with all caps, and in here let me supply bootstrap 4. So this crispy form template knows that it needs to use the bootstrap template to style our forms. So that's it about the registration of our crispy form, and we have to use this crispy forms right in our registration.html. To use it, first we need to load our crispy form in here. To load it, use the load command, and in here we have to use crispy form tags. Yeah, this will load the crispy forms library into our template, and in here we can use this crispy form with the help of this pipe symbol. So this syntax is called an filter in Django template. By using this syntax, we can apply a special attribute to this variable that modifies the value in that variable. For now, I need to use the crispy form styles right in our form. So to do it, let's enclose this crispy within the filter of our form variable. So that's it. Now we are good to go. So let me first run the Django server. So our form is good to see now. So it provides our form with the neater styles. So now let's add our email field to our registration form. So now let's try adding email to this field and check whether it works. Let me refresh this page. Yeah, it appears, email field appears, but it isn't marked as a mandatory field. As you could see in here, an asterisk symbol right above, right after our username, and in password and in confirm password field. So these fields are marked as mandatory fields, but our email ID is not marked as a mandatory field. And trust me, this won't work, and it doesn't check for duplicate email ID in from our database. It's just a placeholder to say, and it doesn't work. So by this we could see that registration form validates only these three fields: username, password 1 and password 2 fields. Now our job is to make this email field as a mandatory thing and also run those duplicate checks for our email field too. To make it mandatory, the idea is to discard this email field that ships along with the form and create a new email form field and make it as a mandatory thing while creation, so that we could use that in here. So to do it, inside our child class and outside our meta class, we are going to create a new email field from our form. So to use that form in here, we need to import that from Django import forms right in here, and in here we need to create an email field. So let's create an attribute named email, and in here we are going to import email field from our forms library. So that's it, we have created an email field. And one another thing to say, by default this field is marked as a mandatory, and all other field from this form library is marked as a mandatory by default, so that now we could use this attribute right in our field list. Let me include that email attribute in here. Now that's it. Let's jump back to our browser and check whether it works. Let me refresh this page. So as you could see in here, this field is marked as an required field with an asterisk sign after it. But we need to make this email field to validate our user input. Still now it doesn't validate our user inputs to check for any duplicates entry in our database. So now let's understand how our user creation form validates all these fields in here. In user creation form, every field right in here is mapped with a function called clean underscore field name. For example, this field right in here is mapped with a function named field underscore username, and this field underscore password one, and this named field underscore password 2 function. And all these clean underscore username, password one, and password 2 functions are provided in the background scenes of this registration form, but there is no such function for this email field, so that we are going to create one in our child. So in here we are going to create a def clean underscore email function. So this function is going to run all the validation logics, and it will return the value to the database if it is validated correctly, or else it will throw an validation error. So the idea is to create a function named clean underscore email, and to check whether this email already exists in the database. If no, return the value to the database, or else throw an validation error. Under this function, we could fetch the email stored in the form self cleaned data dot get, and in here I need to supply the field name in here. So this clean underscore data is actually a dictionary which stores all the values from the form that the user currently submitted, and from that form we are getting this email field value, and that email is going to get stored in the form underscore email variable name, and we are going to check whether this form underscore email is already been presented in our database. To do it, there's a just simple logic involved in here. So let me first execute that logic and explain what's happening in here. In users and in all objects, we are going to filter our email field from form email, and from that list we are going to return the first value. And this if block is going to get fired if and only if the database or user model contains the email field that's equal to form email, and this if block is going to get fired on that situation. So if there is no duplication of email, this else block logics will going to get fired. So now let's write logics for this else block right in here. So if there is no email duplication, so we could just return the email that we got from our form. So we could say return form email. So that's it. This will return this value, and this value will be stored in our database. So or else, so if there is any email duplication, this if block is going to run. So in this situation we are going to raise an validation error. To do it, within this raise method we are going to fire an validation error message. To do it, we have to import that validation error from the Django.co.exceptions, Django.core.exceptions. We are going to import that validation error, and in here we are going to erase that validation error saying that this email ID already exists. So that's it for this clean underscore email function. Yeah, it will work perfectly fine. So now let's go and add our post information in there. As of now, our view cannot handle post logics. So in here, the exact same logic that we handled while creating our post way before handling our class based views. Yeah, those all the logics will get applied in here. So I will quickly run through it. I'm going to separate this view into two blocks. First block is going to handle post logic, and second block is going to handle our get logic. And on our request variable, I'm going to check my method, and this if it is going to be post, I'm going to execute some logics in here, and if it is an else block, I'm going to create an form instance, and I'm going to render those to my front end. So that's the logic for get method. So I'm going to fill in the logics for my post. So let me create an instance of the form. As I said before, since this forms.py file has a direct integration with this user model, we could save all our data from this form itself. So to do it, we need to have the filled in form right in here. So to fill in our form with the details that's coming from the post request, we could simply say request dot post. So this post attribute will contain all the field information that user filled in here, so that we could get all those and fill in our form. And in here we have to check for another condition whether this form has been successfully validated. So if form dot is valid, and we are going to save this form to our database, we could do that by form dot save. So in here we need to redirect our user so that we could use return, and in here redirect method. To use that redirect method, first we need to import that from our shortcuts redirect, and here redirect, and in here let me redirect to the home page. URL path name for that home page is also home, I think so. In here we could execute the logics if the form is not being correctly validated, so that we could pass this filled in and write to our front end with an validation error message. So if the form is not been correctly validated, we could pass the currently filled in form to our front end, and we could ask our user to correct those validation errors and try again. So that's it we are doing in here. We are passing the currently filled in form right in here. So let me clean these codes and make it look a bit nicer. So let me get rid of this else block, and in here I'm not going to contain this return statement within that else block. I'm going to push those outward. So now it's also going to work as same. First it's going to check for the method. So if it's post, it's going to execute all these logics. So if it is validated, it's going to save our form to a database, and it's going to return to our home page. Or else if the form is not been correctly validated, it will come down right in here, and this block else block is not going to get validated, because since this is a post request and this return statement is going to run, and this form variable right in here is a form variable with the currently filled in details, so it works fine as before. So if it is an get request, this all these logics will not going to run, and it will come straight to this else block, and then empty form is going to get created, and we are going to return that empty form to our template. So that's it for all our logics. So let's go to our front end and let's actually create a user. So in this password field, our password that we are going to supply in here must satisfy all these conditions. So all these validation checks, our registration forms, our user creation forms will do those for us. It will save a bunch of time for us. That's it. And yeah, this I will forget every time, guys. You have to add an CSRF token here. So it's good now. As you could see in here, after our successful creation, navigated to our home page. Yeah, it's a great work, guys, in this video. This video is quite bit long. So you could also create a form, and you could experiment with that with the wrong credentials or duplicate credentials from the database. It will work perfectly fine, I assure you. So that's it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching this video till this end. If you like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to our channel. Please give this video a thumbs up. In our next video, we are going to create a login and logout view. So thank you for watching, guys. See you in the next video. Bye.